Sound good? Good? All right. I'll start over. Hi, my name is Mahesh Murthy. I'm the founder of Karma. Um, I'll give a quick background on Karma, what I do. I'm a technical founder. I write a lot of code, and I'm passionate about on-chain reputation systems, and I look at a lot of data. Little bit of an agenda, just so you guys know what's going on for the next 20 or so minutes. Uh, I'll want to give a quick introduction of what we do at Karma, and then talk a little bit about governance, delegation in DAO governance, and then most of the time I want to spend walking over like all the things which we have learned, all the stats we have, and how the governance is working in DAOs, and then some suggestions of like how we can do better. So quickly about Karma, we build a suite of tools for DAOs to improve their governance, and all the tools which we build are around contributors. So essentially, we are solving the problem of DAO contributor reputation. Our core product today is the DAO Delegate dashboard. We help DAOs onboard delegates. We track their delegate activity, provide visibility into the community of to like who are the delegates, how are they performing, and then we help token holders delegate their tokens. This is like how an example of a dashboard, what it looks like. So we have this is an example of a Gitcoin dashboard with all the delegates we listed, and then you can see the delegates activity, all the proposals they have voted on, how is their delegated voting power trending, like how is the breakdown of their votes. There's Contrarian index, I'll talk about it a little bit later. And then these are like some of the few DAOs which we work with a number of DAOs, like these are like some of the bigger DAOs we work with today. Um, and before I actually go into the stats, why should you even care about this, or why should you listen to me? So just to set some context, we have worked with about like we have integrated with around 50 DAOs, and we have data points on like few 100,000 delegates and few million token holders who delegate their tokens, and we track voting and proposal across like 50 DAOs. There's like millions of votes being cast over the last few years. All of that data has been indexed. So our learning is literally based on all this data. Um, so with that said, just to set some context of where we are going with the governance, when the DAOs started, when they spun off, they said, okay, every token holder can govern the DAO. So every token holder had a bunch of tokens, and they would say like, oh, let's all vote on proposals. Let's all vote on these making decisions. But reality was not everyone cares. Like all the token holders don't really care about governance, and also a lot of them don't have the time. Like I don't have time for like all the tokens I hold to go and govern. So what do you do? Like so, the next iteration of the DAOs was they introduced the delegation model. This is like any representative. So you have I have 100 tokens. I don't have time to govern, so I'll just hand it to you. Like I'll just give my voting power to you. So now the question becomes, who are these delegates? Should I even delegate to them? What should I do? So it opened up a whole new different set of problems, which is what I want to like talk about how it's working. So at a high level, the way delegation works is you delegate your as a token holder, you delegate your tokens, you give your voting power to someone, and then the token holder trusts that you make the right decision, and then if you don't like this delegate, you simply redelegate your tokens, give the voting power to someone else. So that's essentially at a high level what the delegation process is. And the goal of any DAO to have a healthy governance is to have a large group of contributors who bring in like diverse thinking and engage in the governance process in a civilized way. So with that background set, let's look at some numbers of how the delegation is working today. So if you look at this chart, we pulled some stats for some of the larger DAOs who have active governance. And you can see, like, for example, Uniswap, like 60% is blue, which is never voted. So there are like 60% of the delegates have literally never voted on these and any proposal. And if you look at, you can look at any of the DAOs, like the numbers are pretty high. Now you can say like, okay, like number of delegators doesn't matter. Like let's look at the voting power. If you look at the voting power, it's not any better. Like here, like 60% of the voting power goes unused, and even these ones are like less than 10%. Like so, more than half or 50, 60% of the votes barely get used. It's like everyone's like delegating, but like nothing really is happening. So that is like a big issue. Like not many DAOs are like looking into, which is where like we are bringing in these insights and it's like you need to improve your delegation process. Um, so we did another analysis a month or two ago, wherein we termed any delegate who has never voted as ghost delegates. So we said like they're getting all these voting power, but they're literally not doing anything with it. So we found like on average 55% of the people are literally not voting. They're all constantly getting delegations, but they're not at all voting on proposals at all. So and it's kind of ranges by DAO, but that's kind of the average where we are. So we tweeted that out, and then people were like, okay, well, don't just look at the number of delegates, how much voting, how many delegators are not being useful, but look at like the voting power. So we're like, okay, let's pull that voting power and see how well is the voting power being used. Um, Optimism is like, if you guys don't know, like Optimism is one of like the places where like the governance activity is like pretty high and very active and dynamic. They have a pretty good number. Like most of the voting power is being exercised, which is impressive. But like if you look at like a lot of other DAOs, like the numbers keep going down. And mind you, this is only based on like in the last 6 months, if you have voted on even one proposal, we consider like, okay, that's active. So you're in the green. If you really start stretching the numbers to how many people have voted on like 50% of the proposals or 70% of the proposals, that number like goes down, like the numbers look worse than this. Um, so basically what I want to say is not all delegates are being active. There's like a core set of delegates who are like very active on proposals, but a lot of others are like continuously like receiving voting power, but they're all just going for waste. It's just not, they're not exercising their voting power at all. Um, and then another thing is one of the ideas of the whole the delegation model in these DAOs is if I don't like my delegate, like I should just redelegate my tokens. Because they're neither not involved or I don't like how they make the decisions. Or sometimes this delegate has too much voting power. Like we don't want the voting power to be concentrated on one few delegates. So let me just redelegate, right? So in theory, that's like the idea behind redelegating. So we were like, okay, let's look at all the DAOs and see how well are people redelegating. Is the redelegations even happening? Surprisingly or not surprisingly, there's barely any redelegations happening. So people are like, if you look at like Optimism again is like better, but like still less. But some of the DAOs, there's barely any redelegations happening. So which is like, well, if you have to like constantly see like here is the thesis and how is it working out. So one of the thesis is like redelegation should be active, like everyone should be actively redelegating their tokens, but realistically it's not at all happening. So this is like something like DAO designers, the governance designers should like consider, like how do we make it easy to redelegate. One of the things with like a lot of the mainnet DAOs, it's just too expensive. No one wants to spend like $20 or $15, $15 like executing a transaction to redelegate, right? So Optimism is good because it's fairly like it's a L2 and like it's a few pennies to redelegate. But everyone else, it's like it's on mainnet, it just doesn't happen enough. And then another interesting thing is the whole idea of a DAO is everyone should speak their mind, everyone should vote the way they believe. So we were like, let's look at some data and see how are the delegates voting on proposals. Um, so I don't know if you can make out here. So let me explain this chart. Like what this is we introduced this index called the Contrarian index. So if you are a delegate, how often are you voting against the majority? So are you just like going with the herd mentality and saying, okay, everyone is voting this way, I'm just going to safely vote? Or are you going to say, this is this is not good for the DAO, I'm going to just vote against it? How often is that happening? And especially if you have a lot of voting power, like, are you willing to stand up and say this is BS? Like, I'm not going to vote against. I'm going to vote against it. So it turns out, like, as your voting power increases, your contrary index is not a lot. So like, you're not really like going against the grain. So in fact, I've talked to a lot of delegates who don't want to like vote against like the majority. Like they're like, I don't want to ruffle feathers, right? So here, this whole stacked dots is, which means they're literally not voting on any proposals outside of um, the norm. Like they're not voting against anything. Like they're voting basically whatever the majority is saying. They're simply voting. So really, like something to like question is like, how well is this whole voting process in the DAOs, like the governance, working, right? Should we bring in like some anonymous voting systems? Like I know Nouns DAO is like trying like an anonymous system. Like maybe that'll have a better result. But clearly you can see that majority of the voters simply vote per how everyone else votes. Um, and then, so we look at all this data, and then how do we improve our product? So we've been iterating on product, and some of the things which we do today at Karma to help these DAOs we work with is we have this dashboard where you can discover like active delegates, you can redelegate. We even tell when token holders go to our page, we say like, okay, this delegate is not active, do not delegate to them. This delegate has actually withdrawn their nomination. Don't delegate to them. It's a waste. We are also building a global on-chain delegate registry, which any ecosystem partners can tap into. Like they don't have to rely on our API. Like any governance system anyone wants to build, they can just simply go off of this registry. So we're like we're partnering with like other ecosystem partners who are all dealing with governance delegates, and we are all writing to this registry. So Optimism funded this project. We got a grant from them. So this registry is going to be like, hopefully will be like this one place where every DAOs, every delegate can be seen there, and it almost acts like an on-chain resume. Um, and then other ideas we have like crowdsourced, like we constantly talk to governance nerds, governance designers. One of the proposal is, one of the ideas is like, let all these delegates like renew their nominations, because a lot of them after like 6 months, 8 months, they just drop off. Like you don't see much activity. So build a process where you're like renewing their nominations. And then one of the things which we are building is a reputation system. So instead of token holder reputation, can you do like give voting power based on someone's reputation? How well have they made decisions? So can you actually give voting power? You will increase your voting power in a DAO if you have done good work. You have actually shown the results, like you have proved, you accrue reputation and you get more voting power. So that's a hard problem. We are like trying to solve that. And then one thing which you constantly have to do, which a lot of DAOs have started doing, is running campaigns. Like there's like a delegation week and things like those, where they encourage delegates to register, deregister, token holders to like delegate their tokens. So they constantly kind of have to like constantly keep up. Another thing, I don't know how many of you follow the Nouns DAO. There is a recent, someone built this feature where you get to bid on proposals. So you can you can say this proposal is interesting. I want to vote in certain way. So everyone give me the voting power, um, and then I will buy. Basically, I'll bid on this, and then whoever gives me voting power will get that revenue. So if there's a proposal A, I bid $1,000 on it, and I have to vote the way I want it. that $1,000 will be split across anyone who gave me the voting power. So this is like super interesting experiments happening. Another thing is like people I've talked to have said like we should just remove token delegation system at all. Like we should try some other types of governance. So there's a lot of interesting activity happening. Like I know it's like a bear market, but if you go deep into the governance space, there is a lot of activity happening. So it's a pretty interesting space. Um, that was, I don't have no idea how much time I took, but yeah, I'm right on 20 minutes. Um, so if anyone have any questions, I'm happy to answer. And that's my contact. If you need any help with your improving your DAO governance operations, or if you want to collaborate, or if you have any questions, you can message me on Telegram, or that's my email and Twitter. Yeah.
One question. What about the technical part of integrating the protocols with the DAO tooling and chain construction also like us to implement some feature that you already mentioned? I mean, with the evaluation, how will it possible to work technically? I mean,
Yeah, that's a good question. So yes, you can. Most of our, like a lot of our code is open source. You can either fork it or you could just work with us. Like most of the on-chain data is indexed. We use the graph protocol, and all those subgraphs are like open source. The code is open source. If you have DAOs on your chain, it's literally like a couple hours to index them and like spin up everything. So um, we know that it'll be a multi-chain world, so we have architected our system to be like able to like work with any chain. That's how we have planned it. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you.